Welcome to the Rapid Research Podcast, where two friends answer the big questions after searching the internet for 30 minutes.
Welcome in to the Rapid Research Podcast. I am Joel Montgomery. I'm here with Tyler Juvenal.
That's me.
And we are going to jump right into episode 2.
Make sure to check out our socials. We got stuff on TikTok, on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all those kinds of things. Check us out. Please give us a 5-star review if you like it. If you don't like it, don't give us a 5-star review.
Do you give 5-star reviews on any of those apps?
Yeah, I do. It helps people.
No, I mean, is 5-star review available on any of those?
Yeah, on Spotify especially, 5 stars.
Spotify, okay, yeah.
Yep.
That's fair.
By the way, we're also on Spotify, for those of you who are listening to us on
Probably
Spotify.
on Spotify.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, Joel.
So today we are jumping into the evolution of daily hygiene. So, Tyler, do you have any harsh feelings or strong feelings about this that you'd like to get out of the way up top?
I wouldn't necessarily say harsh feelings, but I definitely have pretty strong feelings as far as daily hygiene, in the sense that everybody ought to be doing it. And I notice when people don't do it. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably one of those that, people think that I don't at times, but in reality, I have a very specific routine that I go through every morning, and it's always just kind of been a thing.
Right. It's one of those things that you need to be consistent from the age probably of 12? Needs to be kind of nailed down.
Yeah, around puberty.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So one of the things I quickly jotted down in our show notes is, does everybody have a consistent routine, or are there people out there that have not gotten down a specific routine? Because to me, that is an entirely foreign thought. Mm-hmm. Like that every morning that I wouldn't have a specific set of things that I do, like brushing my teeth, putting in contacts, deodorant, all those things.
I think everybody has a specific routine, or should have a specific routine.
Should is not up for debate.
Right. Should, definitely. I think everybody has a mental list of what is the priority, right?
Okay.
Like if you miss brushing some people get really bad breath. So if they miss brushing their teeth in the morning, it's going to be a really big problem, and they know that. Some people, if they miss brushing their teeth in the morning, not a huge deal for them as the day goes on. But and I think that's going to be the same for every marker, right? Like some people, if they miss deodorant that morning, it's going to be a problem. Other people,
For me, it has nothing to do about later on in the day. Mm-hmm. It's just about the fact that I am going to do all of these things. The only thing that is a potentially not, is my hair. Because if I'm going to wear a hat, I'm not doing anything with my hair. I'm just putting on a hat.
Right.
But as far as putting on deodorant, putting in my contacts, brushing my teeth, those things are I could be running a half hour late. I'm still doing those things.
Right. I would say that if I'm running a half hour late, I'm not doing any of those things.
Really?
Yes, because I would rather not be a half hour late and feel terrible about myself than feel terrible about myself by being a half hour late.
See, that is an entirely foreign concept to me. I cannot.
No, it's going to be a quick extra spray of deodorant and hope for the best. That's going to be how we get through the day.
All right. Well, that was. Now you guys know a lot about our personal routines.
Yeah.
Probably more than you wanted to know. But
Indeed. Now, I do want to say, do you put in your contacts every day?
Yes.
Okay.
Every day.
I have a ton of contacts that I have not used because I have never been able to get in the routine of putting them in the morning.
Really?
I don't need them that badly. Like, I'm not wearing them right now.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Like, I have them in case, like, okay, if I'm going to go to a sporting event, or if I'm going to be, like, performing that day in some way, and I want to make sure I can see everything very clearly, I'm putting in my contacts, but I don't need them so badly that it's worth, like, getting the mental energy in to make sure it's part of my daily routine. So there are some people who I know need them a lot more. I think you need them a lot more than I do.
Oh yeah, I'm practically blind. Yeah. It's not very good. All right, so you've got things like brushing your teeth, mouthwash, deodorant, perfume, showering, bathing, putting in contacts, hair care, maintaining your fingernails. All of those things are under the category of daily hygiene, even though like you might not cut your fingernails every single day, but I venture to think there are some people that keep pretty close tabs on them. So with this idea of daily hygiene, we're going to be taking a look and researching out what has daily hygiene looked like throughout the centuries. My mind is specifically going to 17 and 1800s England because I feel like we're going to find a bunch of stuff there. I'm pretty ready to be disgusted by a lot of these things because I just imagine, yeah.
I'm curious whether we're just going to find new practices that were adopted. Like, okay, basic one would be like hand washing, right? Like hand washing wasn't a thing, which is why we got the Black Death.
We
right?
find out, that didn't start until the 90s.
Yeah, how many billions of people died because we didn't wash our hands until 40 years ago.
And
right?
all that being said, we are not health freaks, by the way.
No.
So don't let this come across as, those.
But I wash my hands a lot. Like a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, okay.
I'm on the other side. I do not wash my hands as frequently.
My full-time job is a teacher.
So you're
I'm around
little kids.
Children. I'm around teenagers all day.
And I have an office/program camp job.
In kind of the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So I'm not really around people for most of the time.
Right. And if I may say as well, I'm a band director, which means I'm dealing with spit and
Gross.
with grease and oils and all sorts of stuff all day in terms of
So you're doing the
it's bro, you have no idea.
You're doing the little fingers wash.
Yeah, all the time, bro. All the time. So I'm a big hand washer, but I'm this much of a germaphobe. I'm not this much of a germaphobe. I'm this much of a germaphobe.
I am this much of a germaphobe.
Yeah,
I am not
I have a
scared
little
by
bit
germs.
of a germaphobe, but
all right. Well, hey, we're going to go and research this. We're going to stop rambling about daily hygiene until 30 minutes from now.
all right, see you in a bit.
See ya.
We are back.
We're back.
Tyler,
What?
I want the whole audience to be aware that Tyler chose this topic.
Well, okay. It was a great topic.
It was?
In hindsight.
Wait, no, that's not how hindsight works.
It was not a great topic in hindsight. We found
some good stuff.
So much on the internet. I'm glad that I live in the 21st century.
Based on the fact that we're both in our mid-20s, we might not be alive if we weren't in the 21st century.
Possibly by choice. That
is very true.
There's some crazy stuff out there. Joel, you ever heard of a sponge on a stick?
No. Except for the little bit that I saw in the research, and I chose not to look into it.
Okay, I did. I chose to look into it.
Okay.
So, starting in ancient Rome, this practice, ancient Rome, all the way through the 18th century. We are talking hundreds and hundreds, not even thousands of years of sponging on a stick.
Okay, now there is a sponge on a stick that they still sell for like dishwashing.
Yes,
that puts soap into the stick.
This was kind of that sort of a thing, except for instead of using toilet paper, you would use a sponge on a stick.
You're kidding.
Yeah, typically there was a bucket next to you that had vinegar or salt water in it to plunge the stick and then sit there, and then the next person would be able to use it as
Ladies
well.
and gentlemen, you have just witnessed the very first dry heave of this podcast.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Now, the bucket of vinegar and salt water was for cleaning purposes. It was to clean the sponge.
Okay. But that's like reusing a mop in the mop bucket.
Right.
Right.
But on you. Under you. Yeah, not a great, probably not a great.
I'm not a fan of this at all.
Well, I don't think they were either. It was just kind of what they had at the time. You know, they didn't have Cottonelle or Charmin.
Yeah, but okay.
They just had a
We need to
sponge on a stick, folks. You buy one for $19.99 on Amazon. I bet they've got it.
Okay. So I want to talk about hand washing for a bit.
I found nothing on hand washing.
Okay, I dove into hand washing.
Okay.
Because there's a long history of it. I would like to say I'm very surprised that we didn't figure out that we needed this until the late 1800s.
Really?
Yes. I'm shocked
Wow.
because, okay, there is a long tradition of hand washing that goes back thousands of years.
Okay.
We just never associated it with, like, the West. Because, so if you look at even Greek myths and things like that, there's a guy named Asterius who was struck dead by Zeus for approaching him with unwashed hands.
Okay.
Romans and Greeks were not allowed to handle sacred items without washing their hands. Hindu texts say, sacred texts specifically, say to avoid, for spiritual reasons, bodily fluids such as sweat, blood, earwax, things like that. Because,
Urine.
Yeah. For sake of...
You might as well say it. I mean, everybody's thinking it.
You had one contribution to this conversation. Thank you.
Urine.
For sake of for spiritual reasons, because they said it did make you unclean. But there is a long-standing tradition of hand washing going along with spiritual things and those things correlating with your bodily cleanliness.
Makes a lot of sense.
It wasn't until Florence Nightingale in the 1800s where we really started standardizing the idea of washing your hands and face. She was a battlefield nurse, and she became a hero of the British people as a battlefield nurse, and she would make and encourage nurses and hospital staff to wash their faces and hands very frequently, and saved hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
dollars.
Lives.
Oh, a lot. Okay.
By doing so.
Save so much money.
And it wasn't actually historically, some doctors, like basically one or two doctors a century, would suggest, hey, maybe we need to wash our hands frequently to avoid getting sick. And those doctors would be mocked and sometimes even lose their jobs because people would say you're an idiot for suggesting that would be the issue.
Well, I think part of that is that the idea of a germ being an actual something you can't actually see.
Yeah.
Like that was the big. It seemed to me, if I'm remembering 7th grade science well enough, the whole idea with penicillin, with germ theory and all of those kinds of things is that initially those doctors would laugh because they couldn't actually see anything on their hands. Their hands could look clean like mine, but be crawling with germs.
Right. And germ theory was 1861. This was Louis Pasteur who came out with this, who was the first person to suggest that there were microorganisms causing disease and other such things.
There you go.
But again, in terms of hand washing and this idea of diseases being transferred like as such, this goes all the way back to Mesopotamian, early Mesopotamian culture in like the 3000s BC.
So they figured it out.
Yes, they had. There was an exorcist actually who is documented as saying that somebody was diseased because, quote, he had come into contact with a woman of unclean hands, or his hands have touched one of an unclean body.
Smart guy.
So it is shocking to me that we didn't figure this out for literally thousands of years in the West.
Yeah, so like, if you touch something dirty, like you're out helping out at a farm or something like that. And somehow in me, I just know that at the end of the day, I need to wash my hands. And that's not because I'm a big hand washer. Like, I don't swear by it or anything. But by the end of the day, my hands just feel like they're caked up with stuff. Even if they're clean, like I feel like I need to wash them.
So
did that just not exist with people?
Maybe not. I mean, I'm at a place where, again, I'm a more germophobe than you are. But
I feel like we got a good balance here.
Yeah. If I touch something that I know even might not be clean, like, or could edge towards not being clean, like if I just touch the table, it's not a big deal. But if I touch like, a dirty dish or have to pick up a piece of trash from the floor or something like that, I have to go wash my hands. I literally will have a tingle in my hands until I go wash that hand.
Joel also has ADHD.
I do. That is a factor.
That's something we probably should have talked about last episode.
Yes. I am very neurodivergent.
That means that his brain goes in different directions.
Tyler is what we would term neurotypical.
That means my brain does what it
properly.
does and is relatively normal.
You have a functioning prefrontal cortex.
And you don't?
I do not.
Oh, no. What happened to it?
It didn't.
Oh, no.
It didn't develop. We'll talk about ADHD in another episode. But
Joel has ADHD, and
yes.
I don't.
Yeah. That should just be our intro.
I have ADHD, and I don't.
Okay.
All right, I've got one. In ancient Greece, they would actually take baths in olive oil.
I've heard of this, yes.
Yeah, so like the idea was, obviously olive oil was pretty prevalent. Like they had large quantities of it. It was one of the biggest crops out there. And they kind of, in working with it, they would, figured out that, okay, it softens your skin and, as you touch it and stuff and work with it. And then they got to the point where they're like, all right, I haven't had enough of this. I just bathe, let's bathe in this stuff. So they would scrape off, all the dirt and stuff. I can't tell if it was before or after they would take a bath in olive oil. But basically they would cleanse and, help their skin and stuff.
Well, I did see that as well. And I think that was kind of an alternative to soap, basically, was olive oil. Though, okay, what Greek culture would have been what time? Do you remember?
Long ago.
Yes.
500 BC to 400 AD.
Okay. So around 1550, I actually found, is when the Phoenician...
AD or BC?
BC.
Okay.
Phoenician civilization was around from 1550 to 300, and they had the earliest documentation of actual soap.
Oh.
So soap was around during the Grecian times, but I'm curious, like, does olive oil have any like cleansing properties?
Well, at that point, it has nothing to do with the actual science of anything. It all has to do with how does this make my skin feel as soon as I'm done with it.
That's fair. That is fair.
So for them, if it's between how does my skin feel after olive oil treatment or after soap, like soap leaves your skin feeling, that kind of not sticky, but kind of
bare.
Bare. Yeah, because it wipes off all the oils rather than putting on the oils.
Right.
And then also these people worked outside, and so I also read that they found the idea that if they were to oil their skin, it would help to protect them from sun and whatnot. And
that makes sense.
And from dirt. But did you do any study on the Romans?
Not much.
Okay, besides the sponge on a stick, they have some absolutely bizarre hygienic practices.
Okay.
One of the things that they would do for oral hygiene, as far as like brushing their teeth and stuff, they would get sticks and they would put stuff like ashes, broken up seashells, and pumice on the stick and brush their teeth. Because there's nothing that says Roman like brushing your teeth with a volcano. Like they would break it up and they just go, and there was no enamel left.
No.
But it was just, they just used all the abrasive powder they could find.
I have seen things like that where like soldiers, even in like probably like 1500s, 1600s, were using gunpowder as a
gunpowder
as a
it could not have tasted good. See, I think
no.
my toothpaste tastes awful. I got a new kind, and it's supposed to be like teeth whitening and whatever. Yeah. It tastes so bad. It tastes like straight baking soda.
Yeah, I feel like the better the toothpaste is like rated for teeth whitening and stuff like that, the worse it tastes.
That could be true.
Maybe just higher baking soda content. I did see that Romans, Greeks and Romans, I think, would also use wine as a mouthwash. So, which they said actually low-key worked because wine has a high alcohol content.
Yeah, okay.
And the alcohol content would kill the bacteria in your mouth. So if you had sores or anything like that, you would rinse your mouth out with wine, and it would actually kind of work sometimes. I'm going to guess it made you feel better in other ways as well, but...
You want to know what else the Romans gargled for mouthwash?
Oh, no.
Urine. In an attempt to freshen their breath and whiten their teeth, the Romans gargled human urine.
Was it at least their own?
It doesn't say.
Golly.
Nothing said. I couldn't tell.
I do not like that.
I could not tell.
Now,
the idea behind it was the ammonia content. Obviously, they didn't call it ammonia, but they knew that it like broke down stuff, and it was pretty acidic.
How bad were these people's breath that they thought that made it better?
They thought that it made it better.
They thought it made it better.
They were like, "This will be great."
Yeah.
Do you kind of just get used to the taste? Like that's something that I don't want to get used to. Like the only time in modern history that I've heard of this is like Bear Grylls out in the wild, and he's like, "I've got to drink my own urine.
Yeah,
it's gonna be awful. Oh, okay, that's salty."
If you grow up with anything from the time you're a child, you will get used to it, right? Like all of these practices were things that were normal.
That's true.
And I'm guessing that's why hand washing took so long, right? Because it wasn't something that was normal.
Sure.
And even if it's the right thing to do, like you're not going to just automatically, start doing it. It goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So if the sponge on a stick is just what you grew up with, why go for the Charmin, right? Like, even if that was an option.
Because it's nicer?
Because it's nicer. I mean, I'll give you that. But, like...
Not exactly readily available, but...
No.
Dude.
Charminities.
Dude, what if you... Time travel, right? You go back to ancient Roman times when they've got sponge on a stick. And you bring this dude, whoever's in there, you're just like, "Hey, man, brought you something. Charmin." Would he know what to do?
No, he wouldn't.
Like at all?
No, I think you'd have to teach them.
You're like, "Hey, wrap it up." Be careful. You got to use your own hand, not a stick.
They think that was gross.
No, there's no way they think that's gross. There's no way. What do I do with it now? Do I put it in the bucket? Do I reuse it? Can I just dip it a little bit?
You'll have indoor plumbing in 400 years. Or just wait
would
for
he
it.
thank you, or would he be more mesmerized by what in the world is this soft stuff that he's holding?
I think he'd be mesmerized by the fact that you just time traveled.
Oh, that could be.
That's fair. I want to go back to mouth treatments for a second.
Okay. I have another one in there too.
Something called the doctrine of signatures. Okay, this was a thing around in the 1500s, 1400s, around that time, in I believe England. Okay, and the idea was a creature resembling a body part could help heal that body part.
What are you talking about?
No, this was a thing. This was a thing called the doctrine of signatures.
And we're still in the same episode on
hygiene. Yes. Okay.
What are you talking? What's it called? The doctrine of signatures?
Doctrine of signatures.
That doesn't make any...
I don't know why it's called that.
Just
but
run
that's
it. Run it. Let's go.
So back then, I'd say like toothaches and things like that would have been a lot more common. Okay, because we don't have as much oral hygiene and things like that. So what they believed was that mice resembled teeth. And there was a practice that they would take a mouse, dead, cut it in half, and you'd chew on it. And that was supposed to heal your toothache.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Like that would taste like a dead mouse.
Yes.
Like we know what a dead mouse smells like. We know what a dead mouse looks like. What's left? What does it taste like?
That was a practice in the 1500s was to just put a dead mouse in your mouth. And I'm going to guess that didn't help anything.
No, it probably made it worse.
Probably made you worse.
Yeah.
So
there was a practice in Japan back in the 700s to, this is very specific, like 794 to 1185. Like very specific years that this happened. It's called Ohaguro, and it's blackening your teeth for beauty.
This.
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, these women, especially like rich women in whatever Japanese aristocracy there was, they would blacken their teeth using like vinegar and tannins and different things. My guess is coal was no, coal would have whitened it, so that doesn't make any sense. It looks black though. But basically, they would intentionally blacken their teeth because apparently it was beautiful.
Interesting. I did look a little bit into that. I didn't see a ton on it.
It's like it's like horror movie teeth.
Can you imagine?
Like intentionally being like the nun.
Yes. We need to get a close up of what just happened. That was insane. I was about to say, can you imagine doing that today? And then I realized, yes, I can.
And it's awful.
Because we have such insane beauty standards even today. And
we do.
That, like, the idea of teeth blackening becoming a rich thing to do, and, like, all of a sudden all the Hollywood stars are blackening their teeth.
It's not all that far out.
It's not shocking to me. The idea of looking and seeing a Jimmy Fallon interview and it's Lady Gaga with her teeth completely black would not throw anybody for a loop.
No.
And then you start watching, and all of a sudden, you have Taylor Swift doing it, and then you have Ariana Grande doing it, and all of a sudden, now all the teenage girls are blackening their teeth. This is not a far-fetched idea.
It's not far-fetched. And so, like, and I'm not putting these in the same categories, but you have stuff like having silver hair. Like, that's kind of a thing right now where girls are like, hey, silver hair is, in, it's the thing to do. Not like metal silver, but as far as like a very silver blonde, that sort of thing. And it's just like, it's the thing to do. It's in people, even like in interior design, is all grayscale, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And very muted colors. And so just subtle stuff like that, no question, it's a possibility of like something that could easily come back and
absolutely
all of a sudden just be a hippie thing to do.
I have a couple last things real quick that kind of
I have together. Like 2 more pages.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you go?
Okay, I'm just going to hit a couple of them. If we like them, we can stay on them.
Okay.
France, weird. They came up with pomade, and, they had the big wigs. So I felt like that was something I could kind of zero in on. Big wigs were a breeding ground for lice and rats. Because, basically because you had to use so much pomade to like form and shape them, with all the curly cues and all the big hairstyles and stuff, you would use this pomade, which was made of like animal fats and stuff and lard, and you wouldn't wear them every single day. So a lot of times they would just sit, and then when you came back to them, there would be like a mouse nest or a rat's nest in there. There was a story that went around about an aristocrat who was at a party and a rat jumped out of his wig, and he didn't even know it was in there because it's just such a big wig, and there's a rat in there, because why not? And then they would also rent out wigs, just like you rent a tux, that sort of thing. Well, they would rent wigs, and so they would they would just pass them around, you know?
Don't like it.
And they wouldn't really wash them because they're super expensive. They're made out of like horsehair and stuff. And lice spread like crazy. Like from what I saw online, lice was a very typical thing for pre-1950s world. Like lice, you just kind of lived with it.
Pre-1950s?
Yes.
1950s?
Yes, because in both the world wars, with trench coats, down in the trenches, lice was just a thing. Like I don't know why specifically, but all over the place you would have just lice, and it was a normal part of life.
Oh. I'm gonna follow up with that for a
Okay.
second, because like I hadn't thought of that as being that late, but I did find something about lice. I believe this was around the 1500s as well. That there are accounts of people choosing not to kill the lice on their body, knowing it's there, and just choosing not to kill it, because there was actually a belief that lice killed the toxins in your body.
Oh my.
So people would purposefully choose not to get rid of the lice, even if they knew it was there and could get rid of them.
We as people kind of have a proclivity to that sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. Like that's the idea of keeping a spider alive in your house because it'll kill the flies.
Yeah.
You know, the lesser evil.
Cats,
the lesser evil.
definitely an evil.
You got immunizations, and probably and this one is scientifically backed, but it's the same exact principle where it's like, give me a little bit of the disease because, you know, my body will be able to handle it, and it'll give me a resistance to it in the future. But that seems like we like those kind of things because it makes us feel smarter than we are.
Yeah. I think it also allows for a sense of normalcy to continue, because frankly, straight up laziness. Like, I don't want to kill the spider. I don't want to get off of my couch. I'll kill the bugs.
Yeah, I'll kill it every single time. Get that thing away.
I hate spiders.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I looked at America because I found a lot of this stuff was in Europe and Asia and different places. Americans have had some very strange hygiene things. One of the things I found
in the name of freedom.
Yeah, in the name of freedom, America, I can do what I want. And this is exactly what that was. Okay. People would take baths in alcohol. Specifically rum and brandy.
That is the most 1776 Philadelphia thing I could possibly think of.
So they thought that it had cleansing properties, and so they would literally bathe or douse themselves in alcohol.
Technically not
It's probably
wrong.
true.
Technically not wrong. You just smell like yeast for forever.
Have a drink while you're in there.
Well, they still do that. There is a place in Germany, I think, or Austria.
Yes, where you can take a beer bath.
You can take a beer bath. That's
I
a
saw
thing.
that.
Yes. I would never do that because I think that sounds gross. But
it also smell awful.
Oh, you would smell horrific.
You would smell terrible. A follow up, they would also take baths in vinegar, which would, you know, it smells better, but
probably works better than the alcohol I don't know. Because bathing in vinegar would probably be somewhat good for you, if I had to guess.
Maybe, but probably not for too long.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it consistently.
All right, I got two more.
Okay, I'm going to follow up on your bathing for a second real quick.
Okay.
I didn't
like how that landed.
We're going to move on from that. Europeans, in like the Elizabethan era, there was a belief that bathing in water would actually open your pores and let diseases in.
Oh, no.
So there was a time where people believed that bathing was actually bad for you.
Okay.
And what they would do is they would use like a dry cloth and wipe themselves down, and they would scent those cloths.
Yes.
And basically what they would do is just lay on the perfume as a way of avoiding having to bathe. So essentially, Europeans were the 14-year-olds of the 1500s. This was the ancient Axe body spray
yes.
of how people would work. It is said that Queen Elizabeth I chose to bathe once a month, whether she needed it or not, quote unquote. So
She needed
She
it.
needed it. But again, how nose deaf were these people at the time?
Probably pretty bad.
That it just didn't bother them.
Well, I mean, culture as a whole was not super clean.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were probably other worse scents. Like everybody had horses. And so there's probably a lot of dung all over the place. And so they probably just got used to smelling bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that speaking of perfume, that's something I didn't put together until we were researching this, is that today perfume is a sign of elegance. It's something nice, it gives a scent. Mm-hmm. And back, I don't know, probably 100 years ago, it was not at all about making you smell nice per se. It was about making you not smell bad.
Yeah.
Which is an absolutely wild thought to me, but it makes a lot of sense.
I have one more.
Okay.
There is an ancient practice for pedicures that I found.
Okay.
I've never gotten a pedicure.
For those guys out there, a pedicure is your feet.
Yep. Got to buff those bunions. So we are looking at...
Joel, never, ever say that again.
Buff the bunions?
Never say that. Buff the bunions? What the heck are bunions?
That's like your feet, right? That's like the calluses on your feet.
Don't like that. All right, move on. Okay. We're not talking about that anymore.
Tell me in the comments if I'm wrong here. Because
Buffing
I feel like
bunions?
That's like a normal thing.
That's not a good thing. If you got bunions, it's not good. Don't buff them.
I think we're just male. Okay, moving on from that. So in Turkey, there was a standard practice. It is said that this may have been in other cultures as well, but it's more confirmed and documented as being in Turkey.
Okay.
That there was a fish called the Gararufa fish.
Okay.
Gararufa, I think. And the practice was you would put your feet into a pool of these fish, and they would nibble at your feet and get all the dead skin off of your feet.
You want me to rock your world, Joel?
No. Not with that face.
There are cafes in Thailand today where you can go and get a cup of coffee and put your feet on the floor where it's submerged in water and have koi and goldfish nibble at your toes for the same exact purposes. This is not an old concept. This is modern world. We're living in it. Foot nibbling is a thing. I did not like the way that came out.
You cannot get mad at me for saying we need to buff our bunions.
Foot nibbling and buffing bunions.
Oh, gosh.
Did not like that.
No. Oh, okay. You're saying this is a cafe experience?
A cafe experience, yep.
Cafe experience. The coffee would make it worse for me. If you're sitting there with a coffee or a boba, and you're just sitting there sipping tea,
you could not do boba and fish.
No, that is a correct statement.
Because it would basically be like large caviar. You're just like, I'm eating your children.
So like the popping pearls.
Yeah. Gross. Oh, that's a travesty.
That. All right, that's all I have. You had some more stuff?
Okay, there was a colon cleansing craze back in the 1800s. Basically, this doctor was like, "Hey, you got to be regular," and so, but conveniently, he also had a medicine to sell. And so it was none other than castor oil, and he would sell it and basically say, "Hey, take some of this every day. You'll stay regular." Okay. And boy, did they. He kind of sold this idea that not only was there external cleanliness by like taking baths and stuff, but there was internal cleanliness, and that kind of, came through the colon cleanse.
I have no follow-up to that.
Okay. moving on.
That makes sense. I mean,
it does make sense.
It makes.
Have you ever had castor oil? Have you ever tasted it before?
I don't think I've ever tasted it. I have used it.
Okay.
It's supposed to be very good for your kidneys.
Sure.
And in fact, if you put it I'll put it like in a pack on where your kidney is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Kidney is. I don't know if.
Yeah. How much does it move around? Is it like
maybe that's
surrounded
actually
by fat?
Maybe that's my actual problem. Is my kidneys are
Your
just
kidney's
jiggling.
actually in your brain. Like, how did I get up here?
Yeah, but if you're supposed to put like a hot pack or something with castor oil on your kidney,
Like soak
area.
through your skin?
Yes, and
Okay.
it's actually supposed to be good for if you have a kidney stone to help.
Have you had a kidney stone?
I have.
Was it bad?
Horrible. Hated it.
Like horrific.
The worst pain I've ever felt in my life.
8 out of 10?
10 out of 10.
10? Whoa.
The nurse looked at me and said, "You're in 10 out of 10 pain."
That's crazy.
Yes.
Was it like silent pain? Like you couldn't like, or were you like making
I was
sounds?
writhing. I was
Okay.
writhing.
You're like, "Ugh."
Yeah, I'm not usually like a yeller when I'm in pain or anything like that. I was sitting trying. When you go to like an urgent care or something, they usually have a little sign that says, "If you're experiencing one of these things, tell us, and we'll bump you to the front of the line." And that's like chest pain or severe abdominal pain, stuff like that. And we weren't sure if it was my kidney or if it was like my appendix was about to burst or something
Right.
like that. And so I told him, like, yeah, I have severe abdominal pain. And so I got in really quickly. And I was 19 at the time, I think, 18 or 19, which is super young for a kidney stone. Usually
Yeah.
people don't get them until at least like their late 20s.
You have to fiber.
Yeah, and so it's usually a lot later than that. And I realized that day how I cope with pain, which is that I try to make whoever's with me laugh.
That's kind of psycho, Joel.
No, that's literally how I try to. That's how I try to cope with it. Is like, because to me, I have this like internal thing of like I don't.
Your
want,
arm is just like hanging by a thread. You're like, hey, what'd the banana say to the orange? Like, that's what this sounds like to me.
No, I remember I was driving there and I'm like in a fetal position, right, the whole time.
While you're.
No, my mom was driving.
Okay.
My mom's driving me to the hospital to the urgent care.
I'm glad you
And
didn't have to drive
I'm
yourself.
just like literally like just trying to like be as funnily in pain as I could be. So like stuff like I was just sitting there going, I guarantee you this is going to be a great sermon illustration stuff someday. Stuff like that. Just like stupid stuff like that.
Your dad's going to use it.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting with the nurse and my mom's in the room and I'm like, she's just like, the only thing that's still about my body is the thermometer on my finger. Like I'm keeping that and
Sure.
the rest of me is writhing because I'm in so much pain.
Oof.
And I was 18, 19-ish. This nurse is probably 27, 28-ish. And I'm like trying to, I realized I wanted to communicate to this person. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I'm just dying. And I looked at her and without thinking too hard, just went, "It's a bad time to tell you you have really pretty eyes."
Was she single?
I don't know. Still don't know. And this woman took it in such stride because she just goes, "Oh no, it's never a bad time," and just keeps going. And I look over and
She probably gets it all
my
the time.
mother is just like full face palm, like my son's a moron. And I found out that's how I deal with pain. So we've gotten very off topic.
So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the evolution of hygiene through America, China, Japan, and Europe. We touched nowhere else in the world: South America, Africa, Antarctica, Australia.
Mm-hmm.
None of those places
All
had any
places.
information about it.
Very
But-
Western today.
all right, you ready to move on?
Yep, I think it's time for
Question of the day. All right, Joel, hit it off. Question of the day. What do you got?
Okay. My question is, would you rather lose all of your teeth or have a different sickness every week?
For like modern day, we're talking modern day.
Yeah.
And can I do anything about these? Like, like, because I'm thinking lose all my teeth because I can get dentures, right?
Right. Yeah, true. We'll
Okay.
go with that. Let's start with that.
Because I'll tell you right off the bat, I'm not getting a different sickness every week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. I feel like that'd be horrific.
I hate sickness in the first place. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think really anybody likes sickness.
There are some people who, like, I've heard people say, like, I just want to have a good sickness. I've heard people say that.
See,
like,
that's really
that
strange
feels
to
psychotic to me.
That's really strange to me. If that's you out there, write in and let us know.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't get sick often. Typically when I do, it's pretty severe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the same way.
Because it's almost like I just kind of hold on to it for a while. Like it takes a lot to get me sick, but when that a lot happens, it's a lot, you know? And so I'm out for a little while. So like one time,
I'm the same way.
Yeah. Regardless, I would rather lose all my teeth than get a different sickness every week.
I think I'd be with you. Same way. What's your question?
All right. Stick with me here. Your future wife comes from a very traditional family.
Oh, no. Okay.
You're striving to defer and find places to compromise, but you've had enough with some of her hygienic practices. She comes from a sponge on a stick family as well as a urine toothpaste family. You good? You need to keep one.
Are we talking today? Are we talking
today? It's a very traditional family today.
Okay.
You need to keep one to keep your marriage.
Is there a third option?
There is not a third option.
You're not allowing divorce to be an option in
Not
this
an
scenario.
option. Divorce is never an option.
There is no prenup.
There is no prenup.
Oh,
You
there is a
are
prenup.
married.
There is a
You've
prenup.
been married 17 years so far. No, that doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make any sense. You're saying, so I didn't...
You're newlywed. You didn't find out until
I
the
didn't find
honeymoon.
out
She brought the bucket. She brought the sponge on a stick. It was a new one, but it was a sponge on a stick. She had you go out to get vinegar late at night.
Is she
She
open
said, honey, we're out of vinegar.
Is she open to any compromise on the method? Like, can we have our own sponge?
That's potentially, you know her better than I do. You know, like, do you think she would be open to that?
I can't imagine myself marrying someone
You didn't know.
who wouldn't be open to some kind of compromise.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well,
Like
and
that.
that's
Let's
what
go with
this
that.
is.
Yeah, yeah.
She's willing to compromise with you. She's like, all right, I'll give up urine toothpaste or I'll give up the sponge on a stick. I'm not giving up both, though, and you're coming with me.
Here's the thing. I think I would go with the sponge on a stick.
Okay.
And I think we could make it work
Sure.
if this woman is especially open to compromise. And I also think that I'm tricky enough to make it work. Okay. Like, I could be emptying that bucket on the daily.
Oh,
you know,
sure. Okay.
Or even on the every time.
The Usely?
The Usely. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Usely. We could even come up with like a his/her solution. Like, if that's
You
like,
get your own.
instead of like, it's like a little umbrella container, but
Get it
like
on Amazon for $19.99.
yeah. It's like toothbrushes, but sponges on sticks.
His and hers.
Which is basically a toothbrush.
So you would go more for the aspect of, I will compromise and get used to that, but I'm going to make it as hygienic as possible.
Yes, you can't make the other one as hygienic as possible.
You're right. And you probably wouldn't want to kiss her.
That is factual. That's very factual.
Not good.
No,
That's not good.
absolutely
I would go
not.
the same way. I would get used to the sponge on a stick, and who knows? It might become something I enjoy.
Who knows?
So I don't know.
Can you imagine getting to a point where you'd go to like a public restroom and be disappointed?
Like, where's your sponge?
Do you have a sponge on the back I could use?
I brought my own.
Just keep it in a man purse. You're just like, it's a fold up.
I didn't know if
toothbrush.
you'd have any sponges, so I brought some.
It's a new thing.
Do you guys? Yeah, it's a multi-level.
It's the new
marketing.
like trad wife trend.
You're not a traditional wife if you don't use a sponge on a stick. That's wild.
What did we learn today, Tyler?
Not much. Not much.
I feel like we learned a lot of things, but not.
We learned a lot of things. Do I want to take any of them away with me? Absolutely not.
Okay.
I am starting to like the idea of a sponge on a stick. Somehow it makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. I don't think I would go there, but like at the same, you get distance. You don't have to be that close to yourself. All that.
It could save money.
It would save money.
Depends on.
I mean, how many sponges are you going to go through?
Well, the monetary thing for me would actually be what solution you're using, because if you're just you don't just want to use water.
Salt water
would not be enjoyable.
Yeah, I don't like any of that. Okay, I would basically. I think the biggest thing that I learned is that in the world, the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun, and so in that sense. Some of these trends that we talked about, I really don't think that they are that far away. Obviously, in some things, medicine and stuff have developed. We've figured out what fluoride is, and so some of them aren't necessary anymore. But things like blackening your teeth for beauty, that's entirely within the realm of possibility. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I learned that there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. I think I learned something similar, but different vein, that a lot of our newest our most expected hygienic practices are so new. Like I had no idea. Like we weren't talking just about like 1800s. We were talking about the 1950s,
right?
1980s even. And that's insane to me.
Yeah.
Like how recent some of these developments are that are we consider crucial to staying alive. And now but even 100 years ago, nobody cared.
Yeah. So. Well, hopefully you guys learned something today. Thanks so much for being here with us on Rapid Research. We're excited for the future. Hey, if you guys have any listener ideas of what kind of episodes we should do, what different topics you've got, or any questions, please submit those. We'll have a place to do that. You can reach out to us on all of our social media, and we would love to cover some topics that you guys suggest. So let us know.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.